Hey everyone, so the freelancing industry is really booming nowadays, which is pretty good for sellers and buyers alike. If you need someone to provide a particular service that can make your life easier, freelancer platforms like Upwork and PeoplePerHour can help you get the job done at a really affordable cost. But at the same time, it's important to know which of these platforms offers a superior experience. So today, I'm going to be breaking down their pros and cons across a variety of areas. Stay tuned while I give you all the important info on my personal experience with Upwork and PeoplePerHour. Let's start by discussing their pricing. Everyone knows that freelancers have to give the platform a cut of their earnings, but did you know that buyers have to do the same? Yep, it's all part of the same business model. If these platforms don't charge buyers, it'll be really hard for them to keep the lights on. So, how reasonable are these charges exactly? Well, as you'll soon find out, one of these platforms is a lot more reasonable than the other in this regard. Now, Upwork used to charge buyers 3% on all transaction, but that was back in the good old days when freelancing was still a relatively new phenomenon. They recently upped their commission rate to 5%, although I'd still say that's still pretty reasonable. What's slightly less reasonable is Upwork's new contract charge. You basically have to pay $4.95 for each new contract you initiate, which might make it a little pricey to hire a seller for multiple projects. But hey, they've got to pay the bill somehow, right? And when you take a look at how much PeoplePerHour charges, you'll realize that Upwork is actually being pretty reasonable with buyers. That's because PeoplePerHour charges you a whopping 10% cut on the fees. Like, I wanted to hire a graphic designer and eventually found someone that was charging $100 for the task. With the buyer's fees, I ended up having to pay an extra $10. That might not sound like a lot, but it really adds up if you keep hiring freelancers for various tasks. Oh, and there's an extra 75 cents stacked on top of that as well. I think that's supposed to discourage people from hiring the cheapest freelancers, but I wasn't a big fan of the pricing strategy overall. That's why I'm giving PeoplePerHour a 2 out of 5 in the pricing department, while Upwork gets a 5 out of 5 for its super reasonable charges. Okay, how about we move on to the user experience? Honestly, both of these platforms can be kind of overwhelming for newbies. And by that I mean, if you've never hired a freelancer before, it'll take you a bit of time to learn the ropes because of the complex searching features. I will say this though, Upwork had a slightly better learning curve than PeoplePerHour, which is surprising because they both have a fairly similar interface. On each platform, buyers can list their requirements and a job posting allows sellers to make bids. You can go for the lowest bid or select someone that made the most interesting proposal. It's entirely up to you, and it's a great system for weeding out low-quality workers. But with that said, Upwork also allows you to narrow down your options if you want to hire a freelancer based off their profile. The search feature made it really easy for me to figure out what sellers operated in the niche I was hiring in. And on top of that, they had pre-made catalogs that I could buy. The catalogs had a bunch of work that was ready to use, so I didn't always have to wait for the freelancer to get done working before I could get the services I requested. This includes graphic design templates, web development packages, and a whole lot more. PeoplePerHour didn't have this convenient feature, so I'm docking a point there right off of the bat. Also, I feel like there aren't quite as many sellers on PeoplePerHour, which is a bit strange if you ask me. I did a bit of digging and found out that a lot of sellers left the platform during the pandemic, so you might have a harder time finding someone that fits the bill over there. I faced no such issue on Upwork though. It seemed like there were thousands of freelancers specializing in every niche I could think of. To be fair, PeoplePerHour seems like they are a much smaller company compared to Upwork, which brings its own advantages to the table. You won't have to deal with a flurry of applications like you would on Upwork. Look, it's good to see lots of people lining up to work on your project, but when a good chunk of the proposals come from subpar sellers, it can make you want to delete your account. Over on PeoplePerHour, you'll get fewer proposals. Some of them will be scammers, of course. Others will actually be top-notch workers, but it makes for a less stressful experience overall. I'm thinking Upwork gets a 4 out of 5 here and PeoplePerHour gets a 3 out of 5. It would have been lower, but I'm giving PeoplePerHour the benefit of the doubt because there are some advantages to hiring off of a less densely populated platform. That brings their totals to 9 and 7 out of 10 respectively. But there's another aspect of the showdown we need to get into, and it might be the most important one of all. What is the quality of work like? I will say this, Upwork's talent pool is much more versatile. Although PeoplePerHour definitely brings the heat in certain areas like IT and computer software, Upwork also has plenty of people in these niches. But it also has lots of writers, marketers, and even legal experts. The diversity is a major plus point because it means that no matter what you need, the talent over on Upwork has got you covered. At the same time, I feel like both platforms have done a great job of vetting their talent. You can select the level of experience you want, although I'd recommend going for the most experienced crowd on PeoplePerHour. The prices are still pretty reasonable, and you can skip some of the entry-level sellers that might not do as good of a job as delivering high-quality work. PeoplePerHour also requires freelancers to submit an application before they can set up shop. That's great because it reduces the number of sellers that just want to make a quick buck with unpolished skills. Instead, you get a whole host of freelancers that have fulfilled PeoplePerHour's requirements in every single way. On the other hand, Upwork isn't as strict about allowing freelancers on its platform, but they've somehow managed to maintain a pretty high standard. Also, picking people based on experience actually factors in the final amount you'd have to pay. Higher experience charges more, but if you want to save a bit of cash, you could go for this entry-level crowd and still receive some really good service. If you want to vet sellers yourself, both platforms give you an easy way to do it. You could set up video call interviews with potential freelancers to see if they have what it takes to deliver good work. It's useful to get a personal opinion on people you're about to work with. So I really appreciated these platforms giving you the option to get a seller on a video call. In my opinion, both of these platforms get a 4 out of 5 in this department, which brings Upwork's total to 13 out of 15 and PeoplePerHour's total to 11 out of 15. Finally, let's take a look at their customer service. It's safe to say that Upwork is the clear winner here. They're always willing to step in whenever there's a dispute, and PeoplePerHour doesn't offer the same level of support. You can get a full refund on Upwork if you feel like the work wasn't up to snuff, whereas on PeoplePerHour, you'll have to submit a ticket and wait for someone to get back to you. There are a few options to engage with a customer service representative through live chat, so I'm not saying that PeoplePerHour completely dropped the ball here. But they didn't measure up to Upwork in this department either, so I'm giving them a 3 out of 5. Upwork gets another 4 out of 5 though. So I can officially say that Upwork is my personal pick in this showdown. With a final score of 17 out of 20, the platform truly deserved its crown. PeoplePerHour ended up with a final score of 15 out of 20, which is a solid B+. You can get what you're looking for on either of the platforms, of course, but if you want more diversity in sellers and a more reasonable transaction fee overall, Upwork is where you should go. There's also something to be said about their superior dispute management. In the end, it's the little things that count, and that's where Upwork consistently brought its A game. Also, if you haven't signed up for Upwork, you can use the link down below to get $50 applied to your account when you make your first hire. So what do you think? Will you give either of these platforms a try? Let me know what your experience is like if you do. But that's all I got for now, and I'll see y'all in the next one.